The Houndsman XP podcast is fueled by Joy Dog Food. Joy Dog Food has a rich tradition of supporting the houndsmen of America. Founded in 1945, Joy is proud of its history and the relationship it has built with the American houndsman. And in 76 years, there's never been a recall. Made with 100% American-made high-quality ingredients, Joy Dog Food has one of the highest calorie-dense formulas on the market. For 76 years, this made-in-America product has kept hunting dogs in the field day after day, season after season. And when we say made in America, Joy has a long track record of fighting for American freedoms by being on the front lines against the animal rights movement and their extremist tactics. Joy will fuel your hounds and fight for your freedoms. Fueled by Joy. The Houndsman XP Podcast Network is powered by Cajun Lights. All of your lighting needs for hunting can be taken care of at Cajun Lights. They have 3 models of cap lights. I'm going to run through them real quick. You've got the Rougarou, which is their high-end light. If you're a competition hunter and you got to find that coon up in a tree and it's all riding on finding that coon, you'll want the Rougarou on your head. Next is the Bayou. That's a pretty standard light, but it's got packed with features. It's got multiple colors. It's got walking lights. It's got the red, the green, the amber. It's all built in right into that light. And then you have one of my personal favorites, the Micro Gator. The Micro Gator is an ultra lightweight cap light. It's got all the features of a white light, red, green, and amber. I've used this light for everything from finding bear tracks early in the morning to coon hunting at night to working on plumbing in the house, changing tires on the side of the road. My truck doesn't leave the driveway without a Cajun light in it, and that light is the Micro Gator. Every Cajun light is durable, made from the highest quality components, and it is backed by Cajun's top-rated customer service. Check out Cajun Lights. You can go to our website at houndsmanxp.com, go to our sponsors page, hit that link, it'll take you right to Cajun Lights. Check them out. They got a lot of stuff to offer over at Cajun Lights.
Seth Hall and Kyle Warren from Paint River Setters here today. What's up, everybody? Guys? Doing good?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to it.
Good to be here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. So, gonna change things up a little bit more. As you guys know, I like running the bird dogs and have been messing with it for a while. And we started off with a Paint River dog, which is a setter, an English setter. But you know, all the hound hunters will be happy to know this is unique. You know, one of the reasons I sought Kyle out and his kennel was specifically is this type of bird dog is very track oriented. You know, more so than most of the others you may find. You know. And that's what drew me to it. And then I got to talking with Kyle and got it and had a whole bunch of fun with it, but it's so unique, you know, and it kind of falls into our, hound hunters background with, you know, more of a tracking sense rather than just a winding dog, which are very functional. This is just different. But anyway, so that's why I got caught up. That's why I got super excited. That's why I sought out and brought me home a dandy from Paint River. Kyle, I guess before we get too far into it, when'd you get into setters?
So again, thanks for having me on the show, Chad. My first setter I got in 2004, so it's been 20 years since I've had setters, and you know, pretty much never looked back after that. I mean, I've had other pointing breeds. Started with short hairs, had some Brittany's, had quite a few Vizslas, smooth and wire hair versions. But yeah, when I was 24, I got my first setter. And once that little puppy basically had a better season than any of my seasoned other breeds in the grouse woods, I pretty much found what I would consider home for the rest of my days.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Was that a Llewellin? You know,
it was a Llewellin. Yeah. So it was a Llewellin from Lynn Hill Llewellin Setters in Western PA. They're since long retired now, but had some outstanding dogs, imported dogs from Belgium, and some other old Bondu line dogs within the Llewellyn world. They were an older English couple. Did a lot of great things with the breed for a good number of years. And I was fortunate enough to get a handful of dogs from them among other kennels, when I was starting out. And it was shaped the rest of my life, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'll say it. You definitely incorporated it in, like it. Yeah, that's one of the things that pumped me about it. You see a lot of guys like, yeah, I got him, I breed him, I got a litter. You can come out here and pick one, And talking to Kyle, he lives, sleeps, dreams, eats his, his setters, man, and it shows. I mean, they're fantastic.
That's the kind of people we like to have on Houndsman XP. That's the only people we like to have. I want to hear eat, sleep, breathe. I got a question for you, Kyle.
Yeah,
how do you spell Llewellyn?
Sacrifice, right? That's,
seriously.
There's a lot of sacrifice when it really becomes a lifestyle choice. That's for sure.
Let me ask you a question, Kyle. How do you spell Llewellyn? Because when I tried to Google this, I was like, what? Spell it.
Llewellyn is spelled Llewellyn. You'll see some people throwing a Y instead of an I sometimes, but Purcell Llewellyn, who this strain of English setter is named after, was spelt with an I.
Okay, where does it come from?
If you're going to get fancy, the Welsh. Maybe there's some Welsh person listening to this and will correct my pronunciation, but it's actually like Llewellyn. It's like the double L is like a Q almost when you pronounce it in Welsh. My mother-in-law is Welsh, so she's always pulling rank on me there.
There you go.
It's like when I try to do any kind of words in Spanish.
Yeah.
My brother's worse.
He's down in southern New Mexico, so he actually speaks very good Spanish as far as I'm concerned, but
as far as
you're
not the one that has to be concerned about it, right?
No, the extent of my Spanish speaking was like me and a buddy in the back of like Spanish 1 trying to like come up with bad pickup lines for the Hispanic girls, like "Tu eres muy grande verde cockatoo." Like you're a very big green cockatoo, or "Me encanta mi rodilla." Like I love my knee. So we just try and spit game.
You stayed single, is what you're telling me.
Oh yeah.
I'm aroused. I don't know what to say. Wow.
I kind of came in hot there, Seth. I'm sorry, I caught you off guard.
Just stop at me more.
There you go.
Oh man.
So there you go. That's how you dove into them. That's how you got into them, and obviously have had a blast since then. So you've been where you're at. Like you were already there when you got into the setters, right? So the grouse, there was a passion. Beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, a 60-second timeline to bring to present. I grew up in a dog breeding family. 3 of my aunts professionally bred dogs. One of them bred German Shorthairs for 25 years. That's where I got into it. 10 years old, my dad and I got into bird hunting. We had our first Shorthair, Jesse. It was a preserved 1,000-acre pig farm. We put birds out, every weekend for like 10 weeks a year. I had a blast doing it, with my dad. That was kind of our connection point. And then I just kind of became obsessed, trained hundreds of dogs for free from 10 to 15 years old, neighborhood, my aunt's kennels dogs, shelter dogs, teachers' dogs. When I was 15, I converted our small farm ed into a dog kennel facility and started to charge people, for my services, and just start off with obedience and bird dogs because that's what I was familiar with growing up. And just kind of grew into that. When I got out of high school and I was in community college, living at home, my father was like, "You got to take this show on the road, dude. We got way too many dogs on this little property here, And I started training. I started to expand as I got more experience, rehabbing aggressive dogs, got on the search and rescue, service dogs, physical assist dogs, stuff like that. Waterfowl dogs, pretty much everything but herding sheep is I'm looking at two sight hound guys, so I should say sight hounds as well.
Don't leave us out.
Yeah, we did a lot of things, do it as a living. And I was training 40 dogs a week for over 22 years. And that's in upstate New York, Catskill Mountains region. So that's where I was from. That's where I lived the first 39 years of my life. And hunted grouse all throughout the Catskills, southern tier New York, Adirondacks, into Vermont, New Hampshire, northeastern PA. Dogs took care of me. I took care of them. It worked out really good. Just didn't know I was ever going to do it for a living. Just didn't really think there was going to be many other options in my mind. And as time went on, it just kept happening. And I was always fortunate since I was 20 years old. I always took off all the hunting season to work the dogs. And I said, I had a bunch of different breeds, and they were good dogs. But once I got to the setters, that was pretty much full throttle from there on. And it's always been kind of dovetailed into all my training and all my work. And then 12 years ago, I came out to the UP to actually look at some setters. And I was here for a few days, and I was like, wow, this place is absolutely amazing. Only read about in magazines and stuff like that. And 6 weeks later, I own 70 acres here and never stepped foot in this part of the country before. And just kept buying land up around my 70 acres. After the first hunting season, I knew I had to move here. And so it became a 10-year plan. I was able to, pay for the American dream with my big dog training empire I had back in New York. Paid for everything out here first, and then I moved out here. So I was all set up. And now I've kind of graduated to where the only dogs I train are dogs that I've bred. And, it's a nice way to be for talking to a career dog trainer as well. That's an icing on the cake job when you get to just work with your own dogs. So
let me ask you a question, Kyle. This is going to be from a total outsider. I am the layman, so everything I ask, hopefully the audience is thinking, but what is the ultimate grouse to hunt? Right? So like when I say the ultimate dog animal for a hound to pursue, I'm speaking obviously of a jackrabbit. But what for pointing dogs, what grouse is just the king, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, right? And those are all in caps and underlined, I guess. So I myself am exclusively a rough grouse hunter from the East Coast to the upper Midwest. So in the world of grouse hunting, those well-traveled wing shooters, which I am not, will pretty much agree that the most challenging bird for a dog to master and provide consistent shot opportunities for are those grouse, are the rough grouse from the East Coast, upper Midwest. I'll have people that hunt chukar out in Oregon and Wyoming and Nevada, and they buy dogs from me all the time, and they come here and they've listened to me talk, they've done the research, and they want to get a dog for me. But every one of them says the same thing. I got a bone to pick with you about the king of all game birds, So because out there you can kill rough grouse, I guess, with a baseball bat. And that's not the case here at all, So it's just it depends, I think maybe other species don't vary as much regionally. But, where I am in the upper Midwest, they're the hardest running grouse that I've ever hunted in all the places that I've ever hunted them. We have the contiguous habitat to fly is to die. And they run, they run 100 to 300 plus yards routinely in this type of environment. Whereas back east, they're super wary, super flighty, they're like paranoid schizophrenics, but they're in pocket covers. So maybe they're going 30 to 50 yards maximum before they're to the edge of that cover and getting out the other side. So you could be stepping into a cover and those wary birds are jumping out the other side of that cover, but you're not getting these really long tracks that you do. And then again, I've never hunted them in Montana, but I'm told that while they certainly use their linear tree habitat to try to put in between you and them, I've also heard that sometimes they act like our spruce grouse do here, where you can almost walk up to them, and they act like they've never seen a human before. So, but certainly there's a lot of romantic stories and novels and books written about setters and rough grouse hunting. And I think that's for good reason. But out of all my people, I would say probably 60 to 70% of my dogs I sell to rough grouse homes here in the upper Midwest. I would say about half of them are very serious traveling wing shooters, and they travel all over the place. And they choose to live where they live, and they choose to hunt the majority of the season where they hunt, because we definitely consider this bird to be king of the grouse. But they love to hunt blue grouse. They love to hunt sage grouse. They love to hunt, sharp tails. And, then you start talking about late season, right? And they all get hard, right? So I think, I always say every wild bird is the king of its own environment, but the rough grouse in the upper Midwest offers one of the greatest challenges to a pointing dog and its handler based on the environment that it's in. They're smart. They know how to use their territory, and they're pretty wary, especially once you get into October and beyond. So they're a real challenge. And having tracking style dogs like Chad had mentioned that I largely have is a real asset, in my opinion, on any wild birds that run, which are basically everything besides woodcock and maybe bob white here and there. But it's a real advantage having that type of dog up here. And from all of my dogs that I sell all over the place, and my friends that hunt all over the place, they do just fine everywhere. They just might track less and a little bit differently as you move further west with more wind, more sun, and less humidity, so environment is going to dictate scenting conditions. And obviously, that's going to play into how your dog's going to work birds.
Yeah, Seth, I was cracking up. I was like, oh man, that's a loaded question, Seth. That's a good one right there. Oh my gosh. And like you say, I think you did a fine job of that too, by the way. That was very, very, very tactful, Kyle. Rough grouse are awesome. I don't have any in my immediate vicinity, but I've traveled for them. I got the Duskies, by me.
One of these days, I am going to get to your neck of the woods, because I would love to hunt those forest grouse. I had an opportunity to hunt with Dandy's sire in the Italian Alps, and many of his relatives and other dogs. And the black grouse, that's a bucket list bird for me.
Tell us about those a little bit, if you don't mind. That must have been wild. So Seth, he hunted black grouse and where at exactly? So to make sure I don't say it wrong here.
Yeah, in the Italian Alps, I was Duca, Dandy's sire, was literally finding and pointing grouse right next to the ski slopes they made for the Torino Olympics back in whatever year that was. Literally, the ski slopes were right there, and they were pointing black grouse on those ski slopes. Yeah,
dang, some dude.
They're a real awesome bird. I mean, they're a beautiful bird. For anybody that hasn't seen them, they should look them up. They're all black. Well, the males are all black. They got this bright red markings around their face, and then their tail goes sideways, off to the side, like some ornamental chicken, and the center feathers that plume up and out are white. So
they look awesome.
And they're a big bird. They're the males are 3 pounds. But if either one of you ever, you've seen plenty of fast flying wild birds. Our species have probably not crossed paths enough that we've hunted to compare, but our rough grouse here fly very quickly, navigate these dense woods very fast. I mean, you usually have 1 to 1.5 seconds to shoot at them if you're in kind of classic cover in the prime time of the season. And these 3-pound black grouse, which are, I would argue to say, 30 to 40% bigger than the rough grouse, fly just as fast. They hold a lot tighter because their cover is what I kind of imagine might be out more in forest grouse and maybe Montana, because we're at we're hunting at between 6,000 and 8,500 feet for black grouse in the Alps. And it's like mature tamarack forest, tall, thin grass, and then a patchwork on the mountainside of juniper berry and blueberry that's like knee high. And the birds tuck themselves down in there. So the handlers go in there with like a hiking stick and like beat the heck out of these bushes where the birds have like gotten in. You know, if you've seen like wild blueberry bushes, like it's just like a web, you know, in there. And the birds are just like nestled deep inside that stuff. So they run from like patch to patch and they hold tight in there. So these birds, the dogs will track these birds hundreds of yards to wherever clump they've settled on. And Chad, you've probably seen the video, but at a later time, anybody that wants to see a video, really cool video of Dandy Sire doing a 400-yard track on black grouse in the Alps.
Oh, yeah.
When I went over there, I got on my website. Yeah, on the Sire's page under Duca. And that was a goosebump moment for me. I made it like an 8-minute video, fast forwarded through some of the quieter parts of it. That was 13 minutes, but he brought us straight up a mountain, 400 yards and, set up a beautiful scenario for black grouse. But that's a bucket list bird for me. I have some invites in Sweden as well, where I think they're even more plentiful, but
that's a very cool bird. I admire, or I advise anyone that's listening to this to Google what a black grouse looks like. They kind of look like a tiny capercaillie, like a little black turkey kind of thing.
They do. Yeah. They actually tried to establish them here in the UP. I was told by a mentor of mine up here that's a retired DNR biologist. I don't know if it was the 70s or the 80s, I want to say, but a long time ago they actually tried to establish them here, and maybe the forested habitat was too thick. I'm not sure, but they didn't take.
Gotcha. All right. Well, then, so you kind of tiptoed into it a little bit. Talked about like that long 400-yard track with Duca. Just so that maybe a lot of our hound listeners, scent hound listeners, have in their mind, break down a track, break down how they go and how these dogs work.
Yeah. So, I've kind of defined bird dogs into two categories, as broad labels. So I think, the 30-second explanation of how I describe the non-tracker will further help understand the tracker. So I call like our American fieldbred setters, all of our American pointing breed testing systems, regardless of what organization, they're all breeding for and performing for what I call a true dog, where, we want the dog to pretty much be solely taking in scent cone finds. All right. Running with a high head, all the time prior to the shot, now, certainly on covey birds, certainly in optimal conditions on hot tracks, what I'm calling a true dog can certainly relocate birds that had just moved. The dog went into a solid point. Maybe they're ahead 30 yards or 100 yards, depending upon the environment. And the trail is so hot, literally that scent might not even be on the ground. All right, as well. But for the most part, those dogs are running with a high head. They're looking to find their target odor by wind, by air. Now, how I define the tracking dogs are by dogs that are running with a lower head, typically between their elbows and their shoulders. So they're catching both the ground game and the wind game. Okay. And these dogs will point trail scent just like they point a scent cone. Okay. And most of my dogs will show a variable presentation. They don't all set on the ground, but they'll be certainly standing tall when they're further off the bird, even in a scent cone find. If they're
let me cut in real quick just so I can make sure everybody's on some point. He's referencing point. Everybody's familiar with the pointer dog point where they lock up, tail straight up in the air. Yeah, whereas a setter, Kyle, enter you. A setter does, they also can do. Explain in your words, please.
Yeah. So setters can point, which we're going to say is standing tall. They can have any kind of style in terms of rigidity in their body with intensity. But setters can have a variable pointing stance, and when the lower profile they are, usually when their chest, when their stomach is touching the ground, in the world of pointing dogs, we consider that a set. Traditionally, old world setters almost exclusively did that, and we've bred away from it. Today, my hybrid setters, if you will, they're kind of a blend of European heritage and more American style, just because of the influences of both over the last 100 to 200 years. They have what I call scent intelligence, and that's what I look for. And by that I mean the further away they're off the bird, the taller their profile on their point. Okay, so it's an intel for me, especially as a forest hunter, where like I got to pick shooting lanes. I shoot 20% of the birds that I kill on both knees, right? While I'm in the woods, because I'm going through thick cover like tag alders or hazel. But it's intel. So dogs are standing tall, on point, taking in wind, taking in scent cone, from 20 plus yards. And if my dogs are setting, it's either a scent cone where they kind of can cross the wind, hit it at like 10, 15 yards or less, or it's a really hot track. So they can be standing tall when they're picking up trail scent, and I'll get up to them and we'll start to leapfrog up that trail, up that ground scent from that bird that's running. And then as that trail gets hotter, the profile of the dog gets lower and lower and lower. The predatorial brain kicks in as it's sneaking in on the prey, and the dog gets harder to move up that track because the dog has learned that it's getting closer to the bird. Now, there's a big difference between tracking style setters and a lot of German dogs, all right, that also do tracking, all right? And one of those big differences, and this is where I get a lot of people coming to me from the versatile world, okay, of pointing breeds, is that you can have amazing German tracking dogs, but because they have hound in them, they tend to be more independent in their trail, in their track, okay? So you can have a phenomenal meat dog with a quality tracker, we'll say of German descent, but a higher percentage of those versatile German tracking breeds are not going to be stopping constantly waiting for their human. They're going to get into a rhythm, find that track, and they might kind of plod along through it. And as long as you can keep up with them, or slow them down, then they can be a very high quality meat dog. But there's not as much engagement from the dog to the handler very often with those German breeds as there are with setters, because there's the absence of hound. Okay. So with the absence of hound, I've hunted with so many German dogs on grouse. They're not even aware sometimes that the bird flushed, whether the bird flushed 5 yards in front of them or whether the bird flushed 40 yards in front of them. They're so engrossed in that track that, they're just following that track until it comes to the end. Now, depending on how much point the individual dog has, obviously the objective would be to not bump the bird, but point the bird. Where the setters differ, and I always like to say, I paint this pretty picture of how it goes tracking with setters. But I will say that, like everything, there's good and bad tracking setters. Okay. They're not all great. There's good and bad tracking setters. And there's good and bad ways of handling tracking setters, but all things being equal, statistically, when you have a good quality dog, the setters do not advance up that trail with very few governing mechanisms put into place. And a term that I did not coin, but I use it very often, is intelligent disobedience. So for my first year dogs, anytime they establish a solid point, I do not allow that dog to go off that point until I've tried to produce a flush. So if the dog goes to move off that point at any time, when that puppy goes to move off that point any time, I'll tell that puppy whoa, which is kind of our don't move command. And if I can't produce a flush, then I'll give that dog the go ahead. And if it's a track, the dog will continue the track ahead. And until he finds hotter scent again, they'll lock up on point, maybe a set if it's closer, and we'll repeat that process. So after the dog has had, several dozen contacts with birds and has handled them well, the dog is learning that it's kind of foolish once my handler is called up to me just to sit here because I know the bird's not here anymore. But stopping at first scent is always the critical thing, in my opinion, for working wild birds with dogs. They got to stop at that first scent. So when that happens, and they've done it many times, they've done it well, at some point the more educated dog is going to say, this is silly. He's here, he's at me, I'm going to break this point and go ahead. And at that point, I allow for intelligent disobedience because the dog has proven to me that it's handling its birds the way that I want. And once that switch is flipped, now this is when you can do an accelerated leapfrogging up this track with this tracking style setter that's very connected to you. My dogs could go on point when they have a track and they're waiting for me to get there, and I could remain 30 to 50 yards behind them all day, and they will not advance up that track without me. And while they've been educated that I don't want them to go until I've searched it, checked it out, the amount of training involved is like an hour with a setter versus hundreds of hours with a German dog in that particular aspect of the teamwork and the slinky movement between handler and dog as you're moving up a track together. In my kind of cover, the name of the game is the birds that die are the birds that you and the dog arrive at together most often. If you got dogs that are pointing far away and, in the grouse woods and you gotta hustle out there, that bird could be in between you and the dog. There's 360 possibilities. And unless that bird was tucked in something really thick to make it feel very secure, and there's a long distance in the grouse woods, that might result in the bird walking off of that point and you having to relocate that bird anyhow. So when you have these tracking style dogs, your shots, when you're chasing birds, become much more linear, easier shots, better shots, higher kill shots. And, that's what's led me to, I've had amazing true style setters. I've had just as many true style setters as I've had tracking style setters over 20 years. I've raised over 100 myself. I've bred just about 400 myself, and I've hunted over 600 dogs in the grouse woods. I've had just as many great true style dogs, but those dogs could handle 90% of the birds well. But if the tracker handles 90% of its birds well, there are a lot more birds in that dog's bag based on just the psychology of that brain, the morphology of how they hunt with the human as a single organism instead of running to a dog distantly on point that was never engaged directly with you. And there's a big difference. And you can probably speak to it better than myself, Chad, in open country. But to me, a term that is definitely a sparring topic for me with some people when we get into it around the campfire is the term hunting for the gun. To me, any dog that wants to be 100 yards away from you where it can't see you in dense cover is not ever hunting for the gun. It might have a lot of point and it might handle its birds great, but my dogs hunt for the gun. They do everything they can to make sure that they don't put that bird up, and they do everything I can to get me to be there with them when they're working a bird, to get to that final point to try to get a shot set up.
You know what app I use on my phone more than any other app besides the podcast app to listen to this here podcast? I use OnX. OnX Maps is the most comprehensive mapping system for hunters on the market today. I use it all the time. When I was in New Mexico, I was looking at 40,000 acres of ranch that I needed to learn. I flip open OnX and just start studying the map. When I'm riding trails, I put the tracking app on. It helps me get around in strange country. I could mark water sources, food sources, bear sign, just all kinds of options within OnX. You need to check out OnX Maps by going to houndsmanxp.com. Click on the link on our sponsor page. You'll go right to OnX Maps, and when you check out, enter the code HXP20 and you will get 20% off of your order. Know where you stand with OnX.
Let me interrupt you real quick, Kyle. You covered a lot of ground there, and I just want to make sure that we're keeping it where, you know, we don't get too many like rabbit paths. But first thing is, I really wish that I knew that phrase when I was a kid. I would tell my parents, I was just intelligently disobeying you. All right. That would be the first thing. Okay. Secondly, I want to ask you this, because you've talked a lot in detail about how you hunt and where your dogs are hunting. I like to ask questions that kind of maybe put you out of your element a little bit, but tell me a place where this style of dog would not be super successful, where you would think that maybe this is not the kind of place that this dog would excel.
Yeah, I confidently can say that they would handle anywhere, because what happens is the lesser tracking conditions that occur, we'll say it could be in the desert, you know, wherever there's more wind, more sun, less moisture, those are poor tracking condition environments. So all that happens is the dog tracks less and uses what resources are available. Okay, you know, so to me, my opinion is that one of the things with these true dogs is, again, we've bred scent intelligence out of them. So what happens when you breed scent intelligence out is, to me, we're dumbing down the dogs. I mean, it is not an intelligent dog, in my humble opinion, that points a bird 5 yards away, standing tall and high on both ends. That is, on a predatorial level, that makes zero sense. That is the infantry. That is not the Navy SEAL. Okay, So when we look at these dogs, these trackers, and again, I've had amazing true dogs, and I would consider them intelligent. The trackers, to me, are on a completely different level of intelligence than most true style setters. You know, we've bred these true style setters to be that way, but there's a whole part of their psychology that they don't have, that the trackers have. So again, the trackers are never. I always ask my students or my clients, so what kind of pup do you have, a true dog or a tracker? And I get this answer a lot when people have my dogs. Well, he's both. No, it's not both. A tracker is a multi-dimensional hunter. Again, they take advantage of anything that is available. True dogs can't. The only time a true dog really puts their nose to the ground is after the shot, or a track that is seconds old because the bird ran off of their initial point. My dogs, in premium scenting conditions here, I know that they start off some tracks that are 6 hours old. Okay. How do I know that? Because I age things with my launcher pigeons in woods and stuff, and I pick them up throughout the whole day. And then the dogs that go and acknowledge that scent, 1 hour, 4 hours, 6 hours later, and you can see it when they're tracking. They're standing tall and they're tracking. They're standing tall and they're tracking. All of a sudden, we get close enough to that bird where it knows it's been had, and it starts to run. And the dog starts to set and picks up that tempo, but it's setting lower and lower because they knows that we're getting close to that bird. So that's just not available. And I've literally had, almost 200, probably 150 of my dogs hunt all over the country on every species, and they do really well. It's just in some environments, they track less than other environments, So you might find a dog, one of my favorite personal dogs, she desires to find her game by tracking 90% of the time. So that dog, maybe it takes several more days for a dog like that. in the desert to adjust because she's having a harder time potentially finding trail, but she finds plenty of birds via scent cones, and, they use what resources available to them. I think people, I've been talking about these tracking dogs now for probably 5 or 6 years on podcasts and putting content out. And I think the biggest mistake that people make with tracking style setters is that they think that they're one dimensional, and they're the exact opposite. It's just an additional dimension of bird dog that true dogs don't have in their arsenal. And it benefits. What's great about it is that, you could have 50 mile an hour winds, you could have no wind, and where I hunt, I've never hunted wind a day in my life because the wind changes direction every 30 feet in dense woods, So it's a major benefit here. But whether you're hunting pheasants, ptarmigan, chucker, I mean, everybody that's had whatever the breed has had a really good quality tracking pointing dog, and they've owned a handful of dogs, and they hunt wild birds a lot. Nobody dislikes the tracking style dog, that are serious about it, So you can love the other style dog too, and they are effective, but they're not more effective. I got scrolls of stories of my students, my clients' dogs all over out west, and they do just fine. Just again, the scent conditions dictate what faculties the dog is going to employ when they're working those environments.
How many times do you hound doggers catch yourself thinking about an awesome hunt you had, or retelling this great story with family and friends around the dinner table, and all you have to remember that moment is some terrible cell phone picture, or worse, no picture at all? Well, Houndsman XP is partnered with Rough Cut Company to help solve your problem and make beautiful pieces of art to remember for all time your experiences in the field. Rough Cut Company is an American-owned and American-made business in Wisconsin that specializes in custom, unique photo engravings on hardwood that are framed to any picture you want. They also do customizable antler dog chews and even beautiful, unique antler rings from their own red deer in Wisconsin. Rough Cut Company can do pretty much anything you ask. Their customer service is second to none. Give them a look at roughcutcompany.com, and when you check out, make sure you check out with HXP 10% off to get a discount on your final purchase. Check them out, you guys, and support people that support Houndsmen and help keep us in the field and remembering those times forever.
So just my input on that, to where I can kind of talk in on both sides of that. One of the things I like a whole lot about Dandy, for example, is out here in the Red Rock Chucker Hills, when the birds are exposed, there's nowhere to hide. If they happen to be nestled down in between two rocks or behind something, that's great. Or I'm walking a cliff's edge and they're right on the other side and the wind's kind of blowing at me rather than, away from me, and they came from that way. There's nothing, that's the only times. But most of the time, they're terrified of dogs because of the coyote pressure that they have to deal with, the predators and everything like that. And they're almost more tolerant of seeing a human than they are a dog, Like if they see a human far off, they're fine. But if they see a dog 500 yards off, they're up in the air, and they'll flush that far away. So one of the things I like about Dandy and the bloodline that he comes from specifically is there's chucker out there that if the dog gets within 20 yards, he's gonna, even if he, if he can't see him but knows he's there, heard him come up, let's just say this bird's gonna flush in 15 seconds of pointing. He's there, I'm pointing, I don't like it, I'm gonna flush, here I go. When I'm with Dandy and we're coming in on that together, if we get to that 30-yard mark and he, then he points at 20 and then I'm coming in, even if I start to trip and stumble and fall and then get my act together and get back up on the cliff and it flushes wild, I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm there for the flush. you know, like, whereas if I had another type of dog that was absolutely perfect, would hold while I drove all the way, you know, walked all the way back to the truck to get a camera, you know, and did everything right, but he points at the 20 yards and that bird's going to go at 20 seconds anyway. It's going to be like, I hear him, I hear it, I can't see it, I know it's there, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And if I'm, you know, if that happens 100 yards away, I'm going to miss it. I'm not even going to have an opportunity to just shoot at it, you know, so that's something I get. And if we're coming in and he messes it up, or if we're coming in and I mess it up, I yell at my buddy, you know, or wave something or something like that. And they go, I'm there, you know, I'm within shooting distance. Or, you know, ideally we get all the way in and he points or sets, and then I can kind of overtake him and boom, there goes. That's exactly what we're after. There's the flesh in the shot. So that's one of the things I really like about him is, and I think I'm probably stealing your words and just putting it in my own way. Like, I may point more with others just because they're covering, you know, if they're like a 600-yard dog or something like that, or a 1,000-yard dog, they may get into more, but I may also have less shooting opportunities. Whereas this one, you know, is covering more ground than I am, but like he's, you know, 150 yards out. That's about where I like him personally. I can get there fast enough, you know, or I can kind of see what's going on, and I can get involved, and that's what's really cool. That's my favorite part about him is I get more opportunities to shoot, you know.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's exactly the same thing that happens, you know, in the grouse woods. Like I said, you know, when you arrive at the birds with the dog, you have greater opportunity to bag birds. Now, certainly, a bigger running dog in your country where you get more wind, all right, you know, those dogs can find more birds. I have hunted with many dogs in the North Woods here that hunt anywhere from 80 to 250 yards, and they cover a lot of ground. But again, it's not a wing game here. So, you know, in that situation, my trackers find way more birds than my very best true dogs because you ever hear of this thing called the scent trap, Chad? You know, where like, you know, you're out there, you're training, though every time you send me a video of Dandy, it sounds like you're got the trade winds blowing in your backyard. But, but for us that actually have like lush green grass, you know, and you're putting launchers and that kind of stuff with training birds in there. You know, and you have your dog come all the way up. There's not much wind at all. You know, between no wind and the lush vegetation, there's no scent movement. All right. So when you're in the woods, and hounds are hounds, so they track, I guess. So me use the analogy, but I'm sure there's been times where, you know, certainly my tracking trailing dog, you know, I had a search and rescue tracking trailing dog, scent discriminant. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit in this conversation. But, you know, she would track miles, you know, and we would age these trails, or if it was a real search or whatnot, she would track miles. But depending upon how the end of what the environmental circumstances were, scent opportunity wise, where that person actually was, maybe the last 50 yards was air scent. You know, maybe it was a scent. Maybe it was a scent pool. Maybe they're in the tree, right? And the scent's coming down, and you know the dog would go from nose to the ground, following that scent path to boom, her head went up because that scent was just coming down on a 45-degree angle out of the tree for the hunter suspended up in the tree that had a heart attack. You know, and so that can happen. But the other thing can happen too is where you know, I always felt I could read bird dogs well, but understanding how the scent is behaving is a completely different animal. Like, you know, reading whether your dog is in scent or not in scent, you know, is one thing, but understanding the realm of possibilities for how scent can behave and the quantity of scent based on the size of your scent source in the set environment you're in are two entirely different things. I've seen a half-naked 300-pound man in the middle of summer sitting in mountain laurel, which is like super, really thick stuff. It'd probably be like your guys' like sagebrush just covering all the ground, right? And you're having to somehow get through it. And we'd have to grid through this area. And this person's been sitting out there for hours. And I've seen dogs on certain days get within 15 feet of this 300-pound man that's been out there for 6 hours, shedding 100 dead skin cells a minute, and they don't smell them. These are certified awesome dogs because scent is not available. So
we got lots of episodes about scenting and the scenting dog out there. Check out that episode, Scent and the Scenting Dog, for exactly what you're talking about. Chris goes deep into the science of that.
Yeah, that's a scent trap. All right. And there's plenty of science to back that up. Search and rescue people have been studying it for decades and decades, Same thing happens with a bird, right? So we're in this thick cover and it's only a 1 pound scent source, and there's no consistent wind at all. So that's where the tracking dog excels, So in the North Woods, especially up here and for forest grouse, when you don't have wind like that and you can have a bird that's in a scent trap scenario, it went to that location, so your tracking dog finds those birds when your true dogs never do, so I see that happen time and time again. I've ran so many braces of true style dogs with the trackers, and the true dogs might look flashy and find birds first, but they miss birds. They find the easy birds first, and there's nothing wrong with it. I love the true dogs I've had. I just now only own tracking dogs. That's where the program has evolved, because that's what puts birds in the freezer. And it's just a more synergistic type of hunt. You mentioned how you described working with Dandy. I always like to say, in an hour's hunt, if I only found 2 grouse, thankfully I usually find more than that, but if I find 2 grouse with a true dog in an hour, I had 30 seconds of excitement. If I find two grouse in an hour of hunting with one of my best trackers, I might have 10 or 15 minutes of excitement, and there's a better chance that both those birds might end up in the bag, because of the interaction. So those are all reasons as to why I have them and the dogs I select for. And again, there's good and bad ones, and there's slow-paced trackers, medium-paced trackers, fast-paced trackers, and all that influences the dynamic between the handler and the dog when you're out there working.
Now, I could give my own comparison to that, and I'll do that in just a second, but I want to give the inverse. Like I said, these are one of the reasons why I like hunting with Dandy. I said that already. This is what I wanted, and this is why I wanted it, and that. Now, the inverse, where I think sometimes some of my buddies that hunt with different types of dogs, where they can kind of excel, would be out, for example, in scaled quail country, where it's like an asphalt parking lot with a little bush the size of like a can of Coke every, so feet, and out there it's about miles, how many miles can your dog cover, and then just cover ground, 1,000-yard dogs, and then boom, they smell something. It may even be, like 80 yards away, and they're like, I'm not moving a muscle because there's nowhere to hide out here, and it's probably going to freak out and fly away. So I'm just going to, cover as much ground as possible. And as soon as I smell something, I lock up as far away as I possibly can. And then you can hopefully get over there and they're still there when you get there. That's when, because I like him closer in. I like to work with him. I like these things. And this is how he's genetically programmed to hunt with me anyway. So that would be not where they would fail to perform, but like that would be the inverse. If I can talk on why I love hunting with him and why he's so special and why I enjoy it, I can also say, my buddy's like, how about Dandy did awesome and he looks shiny. How about we go out to Scarecrow country? I was like, all right, so you want to, you want to, you want me to ride in that boat now,
that's a day that he's going to be honoring more, so, that happens. I'll tell you, a story, a scenario that's played out literally thousands of times. So, I had litter sisters, dogs named Pixel and Widget. One was a true dog, one was a tracker. Pixel is the true dog. She was in the grouse woods an 80-yard dog. In your country, she'd probably be a 200-yard dog. And that dog was a very forward hunter, always looking for the win, working it good, never bump birds. Excellent dog. Her litter sister, bird sense just as good, but she was a stealthy tracker. That dog was never more than 25 yards away from me in the grouse woods. So invariably what would happen over the years of these two dogs hunting together, and I hunted them together all the time up here, is that Widget would be on a track. Pixel, her sister, would be casting in front of us, and Pixel would cast back and forth twice and would realize the general direction of travel we were going after we were doing it for a little bit. And she would hook a 90, and then next thing you know, my GPS beeps and tells me she's on point 60 to 80 yards ahead of us. because she used her sister's intel that was that direction, you know? So that happened a lot. But the other thing that happened, and again, this is not what's going to happen in scaled quail country like you described, is I've also had Pixel casting in front of us and the wind's changing direction in the woods all the time. Widget's has been tracking for 60 to 80 yards. Pixel goes in front of us 20 yards. And then Widget goes maybe 10 yards up past where her sister just cut in front and drops into a set. Bird goes up. Boom, I shoot that bird. Pixel never smelt it. Not her fault. The wind's changing direction, you know. She didn't bump it or anything. The scent was not available. So those situations happen a lot in the grouse woods where it becomes very much a benefit to do it. Certainly where, again, you're going to have a lot more wind and a lot less ground cover, you know, and birds are more scarce in terms, like, geographically, what would you consider a cover that you're hunting in scaled quail country, right? So for grouse hunting, it's going to be for me, it's going to be as little as 5 acres to as much as probably 100 acres, right? That's a cover in quality rough grouse habitat. Now, I might be walking on some trails because it's kind of a patchwork environment. So maybe it gets up to 200 acres sometimes. But typically, you know, if you break down a cover you're going to hunt for a couple hours in scaled quail country, I'm guessing that you might be talking square miles, you know, when you're talking scaled quail country, right? So the application there, obviously,
even double it, triple that.
Yes.
Like it go, you know, like you look out on a range, you're like, all right, there's 20,000 acres, and they're out there somewhere.
Yeah, it's Mars.
Yeah, disappear. Yeah. You know, whereas so, again, it's different. Yeah,
it's different. It's different. So so certainly with a closer working dog, and that's not even tracking related. That's range. You know, because you could have there are tracking dogs, especially in Europe, that will range 500 yards, wait for you to get there, and then you'll proceed up a track, you know? So the range element, you know, and most of my dogs, I just asked you recently what he was ranging out there, and, you know, they're usually like 60 to 150 is, depending upon how much ground cover and wind there is what most of my reports are of my dogs, you know, in the more open country. But
yeah, he's doing like 80 to like 200. I like him about 150. That, you know, like if we haven't been getting into a while, he'll lean into 200, you know, but if things are going the way I want him to, you know, he's hunting about 150. And one of the reasons for that, and I think some of our hound hunters can relate to this. One of my favorite parts of it. Now, this is why I enjoy it. Okay. I'm not saying it's better because of this. No, it's like, this is what I appreciate of it. It's kind of like going hunting with a shotgun and with a flushing dog for like rabbits. Let's just say rabbits, like a Cocker Spaniel or something. That's fun. You go out there and, you know, oh, there goes bang, you know, okay. You do some more hunting. Oh, there goes bang, you know, whereas if you have beagles, you know, they get on the rabbit track, and from the second those dogs start barking, I'm feeling it. I am in it. I'm pumped, you know, like, oh, here it goes. We're chasing. We're on one, you know, and I kind of get, you know, we aren't tracking as long as a beagle does generally to loop a cottontail back around to me, you know, but the second he goes, I got something, boss. I got something, you know, and then we like start creeping in the whole time. My hair stands up on the back of me.
My
I'm
heart
like,
was pounding.
Yeah, remember that, Seth? When we were down there, as we were creeping in, we're like, hey, okay, here we go, you know, like we're easing in, you know, and we're all three of us are kind of looping up, and that's one of my that's why I like it so much. You know,
it's synergy. It certainly. Again, different strokes for different folks, right? So you know, the people that don't like it won't identify with that, but certainly for me, when I'm sitting, you know, at the dinner table and I cutting up that bird, you know, that I got my dog and they're lying on top of my feet, you know, I got that same feeling, you know, while I'm out there pursuing that bird, you know. So it's just again, different strokes for different folks. But going back to you know Seth's question and tying into that, I think like sure you look at some desert quail species perhaps where you got a lot of wind, and very little ground cover, and your cover that you're looking for them in geographically is a very large space. The dogs that range more, or do it. But tracking will not negatively impact. It would only potentially positively impact hunting any species, depending upon the environment they're in and how vast the environment is for the quantity of space that the birds will actually take up. That's where dogs that have more range might find more birds for you in a set amount of time.
I remember hunting with a spaniel, exact same place I hunted with Dandy, and the two style differences is what really struck me. And I mean, I'm an outsider to this community. First of all, every time Dandy would get ready on a point, I was like, okay, Chad's going to see how bad of a shot I am. That was the first thing that happened every time. Secondly, I just remember like when I was hunting with Michael Sula's awesome little spaniel, I was like, how are you going to know like if they just flush? I thought a pointer would be way better because it's like, all right, you have time to get ready. But what I learned was, and this is kind of the beauty of hunting with any dogs, is that like that body language shift is so dramatic when Millie would like get into that scent that you could like, it would go from like, and we all know spaniels have the highest wags per minute of any animal alive. Like, I don't understand how that tail can move so quickly. But then when she would get into bird scent, her like whole body would begin wagging like her tail. It just like move up the body until her head is the only thing not moving. And then the quail would explode. And I personally enjoyed watching Dandy so much because it was kind of the opposite of that. When he got into that scent and was getting closer and closer to the quail, it was like he was like a mountain lion, like getting lower and lower and lower. And I was like, man, it's kind of the opposite from this like crackhead mania to this like stalking creature. And so I don't know. It was really fun to just see that,
is like taking a kid to Six Flags Great Adventure. That's how it is. And it also depends on how people look at, their how they choose to hunt with their dogs, right? So there's all these pointing breeds, and there's lots of people that might be shooting birds that weren't pointed over their pointing breeds, right? So depends on how much a purist one is too, as to what they can take away from it and what they can get their dog to evolve to be. But I tell you, one of the most fascinating things that I've experienced in my life with dogs is when these tracking style setters really click with it. You are really a single organism out there with your dog. And my best true dogs, and man, I've had some really awesome ones. I can never say that statement. As good as they are, and as they never fail me in terms of finding birds and pointing birds, we were never a single organism, out there.
Yeah, I just really wanted to break down to our audience like how a setter works, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know. When Chad was like, I'm gonna bring this dog and he's gonna like creep on his belly when we get close to a bird, I was like, all right, cool, I want to check this out, you know what I mean? But I think first of all, the difference between point and a set, Chad told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm just gonna throw you under the bus here, possibly, Chad, we'll see, or make you look like a badass. We'll find out. But Chad said that the set was originally preferred in the era before the shotgun because you would come up and throw a net over the birds because the dog is low to the ground. Is that true?
Yeah, that
all
has
right,
merit.
Chad.
Yeah, that does have merit. And one of the things that you'll see today in all these 500 bird dog Facebook groups, again, there's people that love both styles of dog. There's people that just favor one style of dog. Do we need to throw nets over birds today? No, absolutely not. Do I think it's beautiful to see a setter go into a set? Absolutely.
Okay, I want to throw a net over a bird. You're wrong.
Yeah, well, we could get away with it with woodcock, that's for sure. And I mean, I guess technically speaking, the woodcock banders do throw nets. They're like little fishing nets over top of them.
That's what I was waiting for, and I was like, they do. Yeah, they do that. So, like, it's Seth. Have I talked to you about that? Where they ban the babies, the woodcock babies?
Yes, and that's where this is an ideal thing.
You need to visit a friend of mine, Bailey Peterson, up in Minnesota. She has 3 of my dogs that she does woodcock banding with. And anyway,
I talked to her, and that's the plan. I just haven't been able to make it work. We've made plans and lost them twice now. So like it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah. So they do it. But again, for me in 2024, why do I like dogs that set? I don't want a dog that sets on 100% of its bird contacts. All right. I want a dog that displays scent intelligence, meaning that when in my environment, it's 20 yards off the bird and is in a scent cone, air scent, that it's standing upright. And when it's closer than that in a scent cone, it's showing a lower profile. When it's on an old trail, meaning we are not imminently near the bird, I want the dog standing a little bit taller on its point. And as we're getting closer to that bird, i.e. shooting range, or it's a hot track and that bird's just running, so the dog might be setting more so over a longer distance. That's all information for me as a hunter. So
yeah, that's awesome that you're able to use that. So in
2024, why does Kyle Warren want these dogs that quote unquote lay down on point? Okay. I want these dogs to pass along information to me that is of great value in dense environments, and it gives me information. That's the biggest thing. I don't need to throw a net over dog, but I'm going to be putting myself in the best position for shot opportunities based on that dog's body language, and that goes a really long way in 2024 of having a setter that is more of a hybrid. If they're always on the ground, well, now I can't use that as scent intelligence. Okay. If they're always standing erect, now I can't use that as scent intelligence. But if I have a dog,
it was cool that you're able to use that different. You're able to read their body language based on the intensity of where they are. That's really awesome.
I'm going to hop in here. This is something our coon hunters do with voice on track. They can tell how the track is ran by the vocalizations of the dog, whereas Kyle's interpreting that information by the set of
the body language.
Word. The posture, posture of the animal.
I love that when I was hunting with Lauren. Yeah, when I was hunting with Lauren, it was so cool to be like, I was like, what are they doing? She's like, oh, she just found the track. And then the next kind of bark, she'd be like, all right, now she's trailing it. And then the bark picks up, she's got it jumped, and then the tree bark, and you're like, dang, that is awesome. So I mean, that was cool. And you were explaining that earlier. I was getting that in my head, and I did see it with Dandy. I didn't get to see any awesome flush because, of course, my bad luck. Chad killed the birds when I was gone, of course. Dad, why did you have to have a birthday? God, I'm just kidding, Dad. I'm glad you're alive because I'm alive too. So. Anyway, that was the questions I had, Chad. Is there anything else you need, brother?
No, I think I'm going to do the classic Seth Hall question here. Kyle, I've enjoyed the conversation. This is one of your one of my favorite questions here. Kyle, I've enjoyed the conversation. Everything's awesome. But now, specifically you, is there anything else you want to share with, is there something you'd like to tell us about,
you got your dogs, XP universe right here.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, my brand of dog are these tracking style setters. I've just the challenge in this country, and hence why I sought out Dandy Sire. Is that I am definitely in the minority when it comes to the type of setter. There's no greater variety in type in terms of the spectrum of types that a pointing dog can be than in the English setter, from one extreme to the other in both temperament, in working style, pointing style. And, the United States is relatively unique in its English setter desires for type. But like I say, I don't need everybody to like me. I just need a few thousand at a time.
Right.
Well, you're on a podcast, so that's a good start.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of people out there. Like I said, anybody that's hunted over quality tracking dogs on wild birds, sees their value for what they are, and it's good. I would just say something that your audience probably identifies with, is emphasizing my scent theory and behavior education. Again, really, as much as I've always into working with bird dogs and worked with hundreds of them before I ever got into search and rescue is really where my scent theory and behavior education came from in about 10 years of doing that. And, I had certified wilderness area search and both live find and cadaver, which those dogs are trained to basically find humans dead or alive, like the true dog would in the bird dog world with their head up high, scanning the air currents. And then I have my scent discriminant tracking trailing dog that worked in harness on a lead. And that experience there is the most, I mentioned being a single organism and having synergy with the dog. There is no greater connection of anything I've ever done with a dog in my life than doing search and rescue, tracking, trailing. The methods that I used for training was kind of a blend of RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and the Dutch Hound Police, who is known for being like the best hard surface trackers in the world with their dogs. And so I kind of, my methods of training were a blend of those two schools of function that I brought into my wilderness searching and my urban searching with the dogs. And the tracking setter is the next closest experience that I have to that experience that I have with my search and rescue tracking trailing dog.
Nice. Yeah. That's cool that you can bring those worlds back into, the passions of the past into this new, I guess new is not really the right word, but this next phase of your bird hunting life. So yeah, that's really rad.
Yeah.
Well,
for sure.
Hey, Kyle, first of all, I really enjoyed hunting over your dog. That was a blast. And Chad was talking about you while we were out there hunting. And I was like, hey, this is cool because we get a nice, neat crossover between the hound world and the bird dog world, which, here it all mixed up. I want to showcase a little bit of everything. And I love bird hunting. And I think what I love about small game hunting and bird hunting included into that is that when you kill a big game animal, the work has only just begun. And what I love about small game hunting is you don't bring down this mammoth creature that requires, all this time and effort to work. And yeah, they're not as charismatic as a mountain lion or a bear, obviously, except a jackrabbit. But so you get more opportunities a day, which is so fun. When we were out there, me and Chad hunted an area. And we're like, yeah, this is just like whatever. Let's go to a different spot, and we hunted there. So I guess the long story I'm trying to say is I really enjoyed. First of all, Dandy is a very sweet dog, great temperament, which that matters a lot to me. And also, he was very good at what he did, and I really enjoyed watching him ground trail a running bird in the desert. So, yeah, man, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and joining us.
And I'll add to Dandy's credit, all at well under a year old. Yeah,
so. That's right. He was a pupperoo. So I enjoyed it. Chad, what do you think, buddy? We'll let you close it down here, man. We're right at an hour, right where we like to be. So close it on down, brother, with the last words, and that's all from me.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for your words. I'd like to have you back on sometime in the future, but until then, let's stay away from cockleburs and hunt them hard and treat them like heroes, huh?
Woo.